far.
Don't get mad at me, because you started it.
I know it. I want you to keep putting me down.
The body of a sitcom legend lay frozen in a morgue for more than 4 months. His funeral was quiet, with only a few hundred locals in attendance. And the most shocking part, almost none of the cast of the Jeffersons, the very people who had once been his family on screen, showed up to say goodbye. Sherman Hemsley, immortalized as George Jefferson, the man who once had tens of millions of Americans laughing out loud, passed away in solitude, caught in a storm of legal battles and cruel rumors. Why did it happen this way? Had Hollywood turned its back on one of its brightest stars? Or was their absence hiding secrets, conflicts, and truths the public was never meant to hear? Born on February 1, 1938 in Philadelphia, Sherman Alexander Hemsley didn't grow up under the glow of stage lights or Hollywood fame. His childhood was simple, at times even harsh. His mother worked in a factory. His father was absent. After graduating high school, Sherman enlisted in the U.S. Air Force, serving 4 years before returning to work at the post office, a steady, uneventful job with no sign of an acting career ahead. Yet within that monotonous routine, he quietly nurtured a dream: the stage. After his shifts, Hemsley enrolled at the Academy of Dramatic Arts in Philadelphia. By day, he delivered mail. By night, he transformed into characters on the off-Broadway stage. A double life, one grounded in reality, the other in dreams. No one could have imagined that this skinny mailman with his high-pitched voice and distinctive strut would one day become a television icon across America. That chance came when Norman Lear, the sitcom king, spotted in Hemsley a strange, unique sense of humor. Lear cast him as George Jefferson in the groundbreaking series All in the Family, 1971. From his very first appearances, George Jefferson caught the audience's attention, strutting with swagger, spitting sharp-tongued comebacks, yet always carrying the wit and pride of a black man determined to claim his place in America. The unexpected success paved the way for a breakout moment. In 1975, CBS launched a spin-off, The Jeffersons. And just like that, Sherman Hemsley went from an unknown actor to the star of one of the longest-running sitcoms in U.S. history. Over 11 seasons, 1975, 1985, The Jeffersons aired 253 episodes, becoming a massive hit and elevating Hemsley to the level of a national treasure. George Jefferson. The character brought to life by Hemsley became a cultural symbol. A wealthy black businessman who moved from the working-class neighborhood to a luxury Manhattan high-rise, moving on up to the East Side. He was funny brash, always sparring with his wife Wheezy, throwing shade at Florence the maid, or clashing with interracial neighbors Tom and Helen Willis. Yet beneath that bluster was sharp social commentary. George Jefferson wasn't just comedy, he was satire, a reflection of racial tensions, and a powerful voice for the black community on American television. Behind that loud, fiery character on screen, Sherman Hemsley in real life was the complete opposite. He lived reclusively, avoiding the spotlight, rarely showing up at Hollywood events. No flashy romances, no wild parties. After The Jeffersons ended in 1985, Hemsley kept working in sitcoms Amen Dinosaurs, but he never cared for red carpets. He chose a solitary life with Pet's jazz records and a collection of cassette tapes, a private existence that bordered on mysterious. To many colleagues, Hemsley seemed distant. He almost never gave interviews and turned down most cast reunions. He even skipped the televised Jeffersons reunion, leaving fans disappointed. It was as if he wanted George Jefferson to live only on screen while Sherman quietly slipped away from the noise. That contrast, the loud George Jefferson on TV and the silent Sherman Hemsley in life, foreshadowed the way he would leave this world. The legal drama, a body held hostage. On July 24, 2012, Sherman Hemsley passed away in El Paso, Texas at age 74. The cause was confirmed as lung cancer. In his final years, he lived quietly in a small home with longtime companion Flora Enchinton Bernal, someone many described as his manager partner, or even secret life companion. Just days after his death, a shocking document surfaced, a hastily written will, drafted only 6 weeks earlier. In it, Hemsley left his entire estate, estimated at about $50,000, to Flora. He called her simply and stunningly his beloved partner. For a sitcom legend, the modest fortune was surprising. But even more shocking was that the will made no mention of any blood relatives. When people thought the funeral would soon take place, a new figure suddenly appeared: Richard Thornton from Philadelphia. He claimed to be Hemsley's half-brother. Thornton filed a lawsuit demanding legal recognition as next of kin, insisting Sherman's remains be taken back to his hometown for burial. He argued that the will was untrustworthy, written when Sherman was gravely ill and vulnerable to manipulation. This plot twist threw everything into a legal whirlwind. The court ordered DNA tests to confirm whether Thornton was truly related. Until then, Sherman's body could not be buried. The image of a star who once made America roar with laughter, now lying cold in a morgue for months, shocked the public. Headlines blared Sherman Hemsley's body held hostage in funeral dispute. Flora Enchinton Bernal, the named heir in the will, expressed outrage. "I was with Sherman for years. This was his last wish. It's cruel for a stranger to appear now and destroy his peace." On the other side, Thornton claimed he was only trying to defend family honor. Their battle spilled beyond court papers onto the media, turning the funeral into a public legal spectacle. Meanwhile, fans were heartbroken as they watched the Jeffersons legend left in limbo. Many asked, why is Hollywood silent? Why aren't his co-stars speaking up? The truth lay in the legal battle itself. Without a ruling, no one dared hold or attend an official funeral. On November 9, 2012, after more than 3 months of tension, Judge Patricia Chu in El Paso ruled that the will was valid. Flora Enchinton Bernal was recognized as the rightful heir with authority over the burial. Thornton failed in his bid for control. Finally, on November 21, 2012, nearly 4 months after his death, Sherman was laid to rest with military honors at Fort Bliss National Cemetery. But the delay came at a heavy price. Many of his former co-stars, elderly and frail by then, couldn't wait or rearrange their schedules. The funeral was subdued with only about 150 attendees, mostly friends and neighbors in El Paso. No flashbulbs, no Hollywood stars, just a somber, closed-off farewell. And in that quiet setting, one haunting question echoed, where were the stars of the Jeffersons among them? The absence that sparked the loudest public outcry was Marla Gibbs, the woman once seen as Sherman Hemsley's closest on-screen partner. Marla Gibbs and the rumors of a boycott. If there was one face most closely tied to Sherman Hemsley on screen, it was Marla Gibbs, the actress who played Florence Johnston, the sharp-tongued, quick-witted maid in The Jeffersons. Florence and George Jefferson were the ultimate frenemies, the cocky boss and the sassy housekeeper. Every time they clashed, audiences roared with laughter. Some fans even said without Florence, George Jefferson would lose half his charm. That is why, when Sherman Hemsley's funeral came and Marla Gibbs was nowhere to be seen, rumors exploded. Tabloids splashed headlines like Marla Gibbs refused to attend Hemsley's funeral. On social media, whispers spread, was there hidden conflict? Was the sitcom family nothing but an illusion? But when you trace the facts, the truth is more complicated. Sherman's funeral wasn't held right after his death. It was delayed nearly 4 months because of the legal battle over his will. When he passed in July 2012, friends and colleagues had braced themselves to say goodbye. But with the will contested and his body locked in a morgue, the service didn't happen until November 21, 2012 in El Paso, a far-off city compared to Los Angeles where most of the cast lived. By that time, Marla Gibbs was already over 80 years old. Traveling long distances on short notice, especially with the funeral date announced so late, was a major challenge. That doesn't mean she refused. It simply means she couldn't. Just a year before Sherman died, Marla and he had reunited. In 2011, on Tyler Perry's House of Pain, they reprised George and Florence one last time, a tribute to their legacy. Later in an interview, Marla said with emotion, "I miss Sherman so much. We even talked about bringing the show back. No one could ever replace him." Those words alone should silence any talk of conflict or bad blood. So why did the boycott rumor stick? Because the public has always been fixated on the image of the sitcom family. When the cast doesn't show up at a funeral, people jump to conclusions about grudges. And the media always hungry for clicks, fans, the flames, because scandal always sells better than the boring truth. In this case, the truth was simple. Timing, location, and the legal mess made it impossible for Marla Gibbs to attend. But instead of accepting that the public clung to the more dramatic story, Marla Gibbs refused to say goodbye to her co-star. The tragedy is that Sherman Hemsley, a man who spent his life living privately and avoiding the spotlight, was pulled into a storm of gossip only after his death. And the absence of Marla Gibbs, his closest on-screen partner, was twisted into a symbol of betrayal that never really existed. The rumors surrounding Marla Gibbs fueled a bigger frenzy. Did the entire Jeffersons cast turn their backs on Sherman Hemsley? But when you look closely at the truth, the picture is far more tragic. It wasn't that they all refused. Half of the legendary cast simply weren't alive to be there. The names that could never appear. Isabel Sanford Weezy passed away in 2004. In the hearts of millions of American viewers, Sherman Hemsley and Isabel Sanford were an immortal couple of television. George Jefferson was hot-tempered and loud, while Louise Weezy Jefferson was gentle yet strong, always pulling her husband back down to earth whenever his ego ran too high. Together, they not only brought laughter, but also became the first black marriage to be portrayed in real depth on American television. But Isabel Sanford took her final breath in 2004 after complications from surgery at the age of 86. When Sherman Hemsley passed away, many fans naively asked, why wasn't Weezy there to say goodbye to George, as if they had forgotten she had been gone for nearly a decade? That question only made the grief cut deeper. Audiences kept living in the memory of an immortal Jefferson couple while reality had long since separated them. Sherman's funeral may have been without Isabel, but in the hearts of fans the image of Weezy was quietly there like a companion spirit. Many believe that somewhere the Jeffersons have reunited, no more squabbles, only warm smiles. Roxy Roker as Helen Willis, a symbol of breaking color lines. If George and Weezy represented the rise of a black family, Helen and Tom Willis stood as a bold symbol of shattering social barriers. This interracial couple stunned American audiences in the 1970s, and the feminine heart of that love story was Roxy Roker, the real-life mother of singer Lenny Kravitz. Roxy passed away in 1995 from breast cancer at only 66. Her passing was a great loss, not just for the Jeffersons, but for American television itself. Through Roxy's nuanced performance, Helen Willis opened a new conversation about love marriage and racial equality. At Sherman's funeral, Roxy's absence pressed the tragedy even harder that pioneering sitcom family had lost a sister nearly 2 decades earlier. Helen Willis once proved that love could cross color lines. By 2012, audiences could only remember her through old footage. Franklin Cover as Tom Willis, a courageous man. If Helen represented the courage of a black woman, Tom Willis, her husband, was the rare white man who dared to love in defiance of prejudice. Franklin Cover brought that figure to life with ease, charm, and humor. On screen, he was often the punching bag for George Jefferson's barbs, yet that very calmness helped audiences see a genuine, unpreachy portrait of an interracial world. Franklin Cover died in 2006 at the age of 77. Tom had followed Helen 6 years later. The pioneering couple of television's interracial marriage now lived only in memory. Their absence at Sherman's funeral made the picture even more mournful. The neighbors who once broke social barriers were gone, leaving George Jefferson to step quietly into the realm of memory. Mike Evans as Lionel Jefferson, the son who is gone. Mike Evans, who played Lionel Jefferson in the early seasons, also died in 2006 from throat cancer at 57. Lionel was the bridge between the Jefferson parents and the younger generation, a character who softened George's temper while carrying fresh hopes. Beyond acting, Evans co-created the sitcom Good Times, proving his range. His death at such a young age left many fans heartbroken. At Sherman's funeral, when no one saw Lionel, the pain felt doubled. The on-screen Jefferson family had lost its only son, leaving George Jefferson alone for his final farewell. A family long since broken. Put all these truths together, and the full tragedy comes into view. By 2012, when Sherman Hemsley died, half of the Jeffersons' main cast was no longer alive to see him off. Isabel Sanford, Roxy Roker, Franklin Cover, and Mike Evans' 4 pillars had each departed between 1995 and 2006. Yet audiences used to the immortal image of the Jefferson family still expected a reunion at the funeral. When that scene never came, they felt let down, even accusatory. Why didn't anyone show up? The truth was more bitter they couldn't come, because they had been gone for a very long time. Sherman's funeral was therefore not just a farewell to one actor. It was a mirror reflecting the loss of an entire era. The sitcom family that once brought laughter and social progress to America now exists only on tape. Their absence at Sherman's funeral was not betrayal. It was proof that time has mercilessly blurred even legends. When Sherman's coffin was lowered at Fort Bliss, fans did not only mourn George Jefferson. They felt as if the entire Jefferson family had moved on up, not to a luxury apartment on screen, but to another world where they could be reunited forever. Sherman Hemsley's funeral was already lonely for the lack of co-stars, and it felt heavier still under a veil of mystery, the private life he had never chosen to reveal. The private drama. Secrets never revealed. The rumor of the man in the shadows. From the days of the Jeffersons, whispers had already spread behind the scenes. Unlike the loud and fiery George Jefferson, Sherman Hemsley in real life was extremely private, avoiding the press and never exposing his personal life. He never appeared with a girlfriend, never announced a marriage, and unlike many stars was never caught in love scandals. That absolute silence fueled speculation. Was he hiding something? Co-star Damon Evans, the second actor to play Lionel Jefferson, once bluntly hinted Sherman had a boyfriend. "I met him right on set." That single line sliced open the veil of secrecy. The man many believed was Kenny Johnston, who lived with Sherman for years in El Paso. In entertainment circles, rumors of Sherman being gay were nothing new, but throughout his long career he never confirmed it. Not a single interview, not a single statement. He chose silence, letting the public only know George Jefferson on screen, never the real Sherman Hemsley. That silence made the mystery even more tantalizing, leaving fans to wonder, was George Jefferson, the image of the Black American family man, really a facade completely different from the real Sherman? Flora Enchinton, beloved partner, or keeper of the estate. When Sherman died, the drama flared even hotter with the will. He left his entire estate, about $50,000, to Flora Enchinton Bernal, the woman who had lived with him for years. What shocked people wasn't just the modest sum compared to a sitcom star's fame, but the two words Sherman used to describe Flora, beloved partner. The phrase ignited controversy. Who exactly was Flora to Sherman? Some articles called her his manager. Others described her as a close friend. But the will's language suggested something far deeper, a bond that sounded romantic. That in turn threw Kenny Johnston into deeper mystery. If he was the supposed true partner, why was Flora the legal heir? Was Flora only the legal companion on paper, while Sherman's true affections belonged to Kenny? Or was Flora the real soulmate with Kenny, just a side figure blown out of proportion? The mysterious triangle: Flora, Sherman, Kenny. After Sherman's death, the press dove in spinning stories of a bizarre love triangle. One theory suggested Flora and Sherman were simply lifelong friends living together so he could protect his privacy. Another claimed Flora and Kenny both lived with Sherman, forming a strange three-person family shielding him from Hollywood's glare. No one ever produced solid proof. But in death, the ambiguity only grew larger. The public was left to ask, who was Sherman really? The flamboyant man on screen, or a secretive figure with a private life no one dared to speak of? The will and the mystery clouding his personal life gave Sherman's funeral an unsettling tone. Not only was there a legal dispute with the so-called half-brother Richard Thornton, but there was also the swirl of gossip over whom Sherman truly loved. Many in the industry chose silence, skipping the funeral altogether to avoid being dragged into the controversy of who Sherman really belonged to. The result was a farewell that was not only delayed, but strikingly empty. The image of Sherman's coffin being lowered at Fort Bliss, surrounded only by local neighbors, cut like irony. A sitcom star who once made all of America laugh, now left this world quietly, his private life still a question mark. A secret taken to the grave. Sherman Hemsley lived privately all his life, and he left in the same silence. He never came out publicly about his sexuality or relationships. He never confirmed, never denied the rumors. Perhaps it was his choice to guard his private life from Hollywood's invasive glare. But for the public, that silence became an obsession. People were left not knowing who Sherman really was, and perhaps they never will. He carried that secret with him to the grave, leaving behind a story full of drama, a television legend, a funeral empty of co-stars, and a personal life forever hidden from view. The cast still alive, life beyond the spotlight of the Jeffersons. More than 3 decades after the Jeffersons came to an end, the legendary sitcom remains etched in the memory of audiences. But looking back at the cast, one realizes that most have passed on, leaving only a handful of faces still alive, carrying with them private lives and careers that went in very different directions. The most prominent among them is Marla Gibbs, who played Florence Johnston, the quick-witted maid who always went toe-to-toe with George Jefferson. On the show, Florence was the sharp-tongued comic relief. In real life, Marla Gibbs has become a living icon of black television. Now in her 90s, she is still healthy, still acting, and still able to make audiences laugh with her natural charm. In 2021, when she received her star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, she moved millions with her half-joking, half-nervous words, "I might pass out," before nearly fainting for real from the excitement. Gibbs's net worth is currently estimated at around $4 million, not the fortune of a Hollywood superstar, but enough to grant her a comfortable and fulfilling life. Her personal life has been quiet, marked by a failed marriage and the raising of 3 children. What makes her remarkable is that even at such an advanced age, Gibbs has kept her youthful energy and continues to appear on screen, living proof that the light of the Jeffersons has never gone out. Another surviving face is Berlinda Tolbert, who played Jenny Willis, the daughter of Tom, and Helen Willis, the interracial couple at the heart of the show. Jenny was once a symbol of a new multiracial generation carrying the show's progressive message. Yet in real life, Berlinda Tolbert chose a path so quiet, it's as if she disappeared from Hollywood altogether. After the series ended, she took on only a few guest roles on shows like ER before walking away entirely. Her net worth is modest, estimated between $500,000 and $1 million. She has devoted her life to her marriage with journalist Bob Reed, whom she wed in 1979. Their union, lasting over 4 decades, has been free of scandal, a striking contrast to the chaos of show business. For many, it is surprising a woman once symbolic of multiracial representation on television now lives far from the spotlight. One must also mention Jay Hammer, who played Alan Willis, the eldest son of the Willis family. Alan appeared in only a handful of episodes before disappearing from the storyline, leaving little impact. Yet in real life, Jay Hammer built a much steadier career, particularly in soap operas, with a long-running role on Guiding Light. Though never a superstar, Hammer enjoyed stability with an estimated net worth of about $1.5 million. Like his colleagues, he chose a private life away from headlines. For fans, it is an ironic twist. A minor, almost forgotten character on The Jeffersons went on to enjoy a steadier, longer career than some of the show's bigger names. Taken together, the surviving cast members of The Jeffersons are few. Marla Gibbs still shines as the last bright torch of the sitcom's legacy. Berlinda Tolbert has retreated into quiet domestic life. Jay Hammer found his niche in the world of soap operas. Meanwhile, most of the central figures, Sherman Hemsley, Isabel Sanford, Roxy Roker, Franklin Cover, Mike Evans, have long since departed. The contrast paints a picture that is both touching and bittersweet. On screen, they once embodied a bustling family, always moving on up to a better life on Manhattan's East Side. In reality, time has mercilessly divided them, leaving only a few figures walking quietly forward while the rest remain in memory. What haunts the public most is the irony. The Jeffersons was once a symbol of unity, a model family that broke through social barriers. But in the present, that family has scattered, some resting in graves, others retreating from fame, with only a few left as living witnesses to a golden era. This truth made Sherman Hemsley's funeral all the more painful, not just because colleagues were absent due to distance or legal troubles, but because half of that family had already vanished from life itself. The impact of Sherman Hemsley, and a closing word. Though he left this world quietly, Sherman Hemsley left behind a legacy that time cannot erase. His portrayal of George Jefferson was never just about laughs. It was a reflection of America in the 1970s and 1980s, a brash, confident black man willing to spar with conservative whites, unafraid to assert his economic power and his voice in a time when racism still simmered beneath the surface. Sherman opened the door for countless black actors who came after him. Without George Jefferson, there might not have been Will Smith's role in The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, or Anthony Anderson in Blackish. He turned sharp wit and attitude into comedic weapons, making audiences laugh, while also forcing them to think. That is why The Jeffersons became more than entertainment. It became a cultural milestone, a place where black television truly moved on up thanks to Sherman's character. But perhaps his greatest impact was the pride he gave millions of black viewers. They saw George Jefferson and recognized themselves imperfect, sometimes abrasive, but strong, unyielding, and never bowing down. That message transcended time, reminding people that representation on screen can itself be an act of resistance. Today, when people remember Sherman Hemsley, they recall not only the swagger and the laugh of George Jefferson, but also the artist who changed the game. Even if his funeral lacked the crowd of stars, even if his body was caught in legal disputes, even if his private life remains a mystery, none of it can dim the light he brought to American culture. Sherman Hemsley spent his life avoiding the spotlight, but the character he created will forever shine in memory. And perhaps that is the true legacy he wanted to leave: not wealth, not a grand funeral, but laughter, symbolism, and pride for a generation. On screen, Sherman once moved on up with the Jefferson family to a luxury Manhattan high-rise. In life, he has moved on up to another place, quiet, far from scandal. Yet his legacy remains echoing through every episode, every burst of laughter, and in the hearts of millions of fans across the world.
Data, analysis, and commentary in this video are presented based on information available at the time of production. The content is subject to change over time and should not be considered a definitive forecast. There is still so much more to explore: stories of resilience, legacy, and truth. Feel free to dive into some of our top recommended videos now appearing on your screen.